Welcome to the Excruciating Minutiae Podcast, where we obsess about sports, pop culture, and politics, but mostly sports. Here are your hosts, Randy and Steven.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Randy. I'll be joined shortly by Steven, and welcome again to another episode of Excruciating Minutia. Ask before we begin, if you're enjoying what you're hearing on our podcast, please check us out on excruciatingminutia.com. As we start today, this podcast, the theme today is going to be relative stupidity. And honestly, we could really use this theme pretty much any day of any given week, of any given month, of any given year. But I ran into a decent bit of stupidity on multiple fronts over the last 3 or 4 days. Steven, you're going to have to listen to me talk about it. How does that make you feel?
I'm going to make myself comfortable.
Get a chair.
Yeah, I have a feeling that this is going to be a Randy-centric episode, and I'll just sit back and enjoy.
Well, enjoy the fact that none of this nonsense, and none of this is, some of this was really bad. Some of this really has me ticked off, because some of this actually affected my life, or potentially could have affected my life. But that's going to be the second part. So let's put this up in context. What our listeners don't know is that you took your trip to Atlantic City, right, to Harris for your sports gambling, correct?
I did.
And we talked about on previous podcasts, you actually did pretty well. You made some prop bets. I think I had mentioned that I had gone to Mississippi, which is not that far away from where I'm located at, to visit their sports books, at least a couple of them. So I had a few extra days. I decided I wanted to take a couple of days and get away from everything for a little bit. I also had broken 2 of my toes last week in an incident that was so embarrassingly stupid that I'm not going to repeat it here. It wasn't the most manly of things. We're just going to go with I dropped a really heavy object on it while lifting something in an incredible feat of strength. Can we go with that? I mean, that's not the case, but we're just going to go with that. Is that all right with you?
Whatever works for you.
And whatever makes me sleep at night. Okay, so that's the official story. So you know what? I'm going for a little bit of stress-free relaxation. I figure I'm going to go check maybe out a couple other casinos, maybe stay at one of the casinos in Mississippi, because I actually had some hotels.com gift cards that I was able to spend due to something affiliated with my work. The casino prices out there are not very expensive. So it was an opportunity for my wife and I to get away, spend a couple of days, enjoy ourselves, be able to relax and have a good time, right? That's the plan. So I am in a casino. I stayed at a casino and decided I was going to play a little bit of blackjack among other games. So took a couple $100 out of the ATM. I have some gambling experience, correct? I mean, again, without going too much in detail, you would say that I know a little bit about the whole gambling industry. Would you agree with that statement?
I would, and I would say that you're pretty adept at blackjack.
Yes. Yeah, for many reasons. So I went there. The first thing I did was, and I'll give the free shout out to the casino that will not in any way, shape, or form be compensating us for anyway in this episode. We could try.
We currently have 0 sponsors.
0 sponsors. If the Scarlet Pearl in D'Iberville, Mississippi, however I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, just outside of Biloxi or right in the Biloxi area, is where I ended up staying at. And it's a relatively new casino. It's actually pretty nice. Nice rooms, kind of contemporary, some good restaurants. It was a good place, right? Not as big as the casinos are out here in New Orleans. The one downtown here in New Orleans is a much bigger casino for reasons that I'm not going to really go into here. I don't play there, but the only time I really ever play anymore is if I'm out of state. So I decided I was going to play there. So one of the games I wanted to play was 3-card poker. It's a game I know how to play very well. I just don't play it because, most games in the casino are tilted towards the casino when it comes to house odds. In fact, all games at the casino are. That's how they operate. Again, not really news to you, I'm guessing.
That's how casinos typically stay in business, right?
They keep the lights on because the games are tilted in their favor. Any of the carnival games, for anyone listening who may be a gambler of some type, you have 3-card poker, Mississippi Stud, Texas Hold'em, Caribbean Stud, all these games are all tilted in the casino's favor more so than, let's say, blackjack is, more so than playing a game like Baccarat or craps would be. The odds on those games, depending what you're actually betting, are actually can be pretty close to not even money, or even odds, but they're the best odds in the casino. Or playing the pass line on craps and playing Baccarat, I think, are two of the best you can do. These carnival games do not necessarily, work that way. But then again, they also sometimes eat your money a little bit less. The table minimums tend to be a little bit lower if you're not playing wacky side bets or anything like that. So as we went in and I'm walking around the casino, I see the 3-card poker table is closed. The blackjack tables, they have one $5 table, which these days, it's just hard to find $5 tables at casinos in general. I haven't been to Vegas in a while. I remember there being some cheaper tables back then. In Louisiana, again, it just tends to be like $10 tables or even more expensive than that, or you get 6 to 5 odds. There was actually one table that was a $5 table that paid 3 to 2 on blackjacks, which is what you would be ideally looking for if you don't want to spend a lot of money. You can guess that table was completely full. Not shocking, I'm sure. The other tables are $10 tables. And I'm like, well, that's still not too bad of a table minimum. But I look around, they have a game called 3-Card Prime. Never heard of it before. It's basically a variation of 3-card poker, but with a couple extra side bets and a little interesting variances that, to be honest with you, don't really make it that much different than 3-card poker. So I sat there, I played it for about an hour. Take a wild guess what happened to my $100 in that hour.
Knowing you and gambling, you were broke.
That 100 went. Not fast. Like I said, the one advantage to a game like 3-card poker is there's a lot of up and down to the game. So I won a few hands. I lost more than I won. The way the game works, it's your 3 cards. You play against the dealer's 3 cards to make a 3-card poker hand. Dealer needs a queen to qualify. Whenever I got a decent hand, the dealer played it, the dealer always seemed to have a slightly better hand than me. So, for instance, I had like King 8-3, which is a playable hand in that game, and the dealer flips over King 10-6. That sounds about right for me, doesn't it, Stephen? You know my luck. That's pretty much par for the course, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I have Ace King. That's a playable hand. The dealer flips over a pair of 3s because of course he does. I have another hand. I have Queen 4-2, and I'm putting this in air quotes, the book says you don't play. And then I fold that, and then the dealer flips over like Jack High, which means I would have won the hand or at least one of the bets on the hand if I just stayed in and played it, except I'm not supposed to play it, right? We have a luck theory, and I don't think we've discussed this yet on the podcast, but you've heard my luck theory before, right?
Yes.
Luck theory, for anybody listening, my luck theory is that when you do the right thing or you play correctly, or whatever it is. And this can be life, this can be fantasy sports, this can be gambling. When you do what you're supposed to do, the only thing you can be is unlucky. Because when you do the right thing by the book, or when you do the right thing just in general, and it works out, is that good luck? Or is that just really kind of what you would have expected to happen? What would you say? That's not good luck, right?
Right. I would say that in a game like that, good luck is not playing the right thing and having it work out. That's good luck.
Exactly. And that's the other half of my luck theory, which is basically when you do stupid things or you do the wrong thing or things that the book doesn't support or whatever, you can't be unlucky, because when you lose or it doesn't work out right, whatever it is, then that's what was supposed to happen. But if somehow or another it works out, then that's you being lucky. So doing the wrong thing, it's almost like a variation of our Costanza theory to some extent. It'd be like if you decide to get married to some meth head, drug addicted ex-prostitute, and she turns out to be like homemaker of the year and a great mother to your kids and completely clean and completely straight, that you'd be lucky doing that. That wouldn't be what you would have expected, right? But if you get divorced in 2 years because the woman you married, does meth all the time and has sold everything you own behind your back to pay for her meth, you wouldn't really be your friends wouldn't be like, wow, that was really unlucky. That didn't work out for you. Right. I mean, they'd be like, well, you were an idiot. And we all tried to tell you that. Right.
That's correct.
Not that we have experience with meth heads or anything like that. I'm just using that as a hypothetical. it really works kind of the same for gambling. You have to be lucky to win, but when you're playing quote unquote correctly and it doesn't work out, that's just kind of some bad luck, or frankly, it's just the fact that the odds are stacked against you. So that's $100 down, but I decided I was going to play maximum of 200. So I worked my way to a blackjack table, and I get to this blackjack table, and it's a $10 minimum table. Like I said, the $5 table literally had people standing behind it waiting to get on it. So I wasn't going to do that. The $10 table had 2 people playing on it, one of the ones that were open, because there weren't a lot of tables open, and there tend to not be on a Wednesday afternoon in the middle of the week in February when you're not in Vegas, right? I can't imagine when you passed through the casino for the sports book when you went on your trip, you were in the middle of the week, right? I'm guessing it wasn't super, super busy when you went, was it?
Oh, God, no, not busy at all.
Yeah, there were tumbleweeds probably going through the casino. It was slow enough. Daytime does not get the bulk of your crowd, obviously, in a casino setting. But still, this $5 table wasn't clearing out. They didn't have a lot of tables open. So I find the $10 table that's open. There's 2 of them. Both have 2 players on it. So I moved to one, and I don't want to jump in mid-shoe. So I'm just waiting for the shoe to end. So in the meantime, one of the people gets busted out. The other one is buying back in. So the table is ice cold to begin with. But I'm like, well, we'll see. Because a new shoe, we'll see what happens. But I'm not getting in here unless they ask me to, because it's just courtesy. But you know what it isn't? It has nothing to do with probabilities, which kind of is going to be the point of this little rant here. So the shoe ends. There's 1 player left. I sit down at the table. I buy in. I'm sitting on third base. He's sitting on first base. We start to play. First 2 hands out the gate. I have 18. I have 19. Would you like to guess what the dealer drew to on both of those hands?
I'm going to guess 20.
You'd be right on one of them. 20 on one. The other one was 21 she drew out to. And it was a 5-card 21. So it wasn't like a flip, I have a 3 showing, flip an 8, and then flip a 10. No, it was one of those, let's see how many cards it can take me to make 21 and how many I can get onto the table type of moment. So that was interesting. That was fun. So that broke the guy out at first base. So now it's just me playing head-to-head against the dealer, which I like. And I start to win. And things are actually going well. I'm getting 20s. I had a couple doubles on times when you're supposed to double. I actually got face cards. She was busting when she was supposed to bust. And I didn't win every hand. It was still a little bit up and down, but I was definitely winning more hands than I was losing. And I was keeping my bet a standard $10 bet. So a guy sits down at first base as my chip stack is growing. And the dealer looks at him as if to say, do you want to buy in? And he goes, no. He goes, I don't want to jump in. He goes, I'll wait. And I'm like, I didn't ask him to wait. He could have jumped in. And you know why he could have jumped in? It doesn't matter. Anyone who knows mathematical probability knows that it doesn't matter whether or not you come in or you don't come in, because what's the old saying? Past results are not always an indicator mathematically of future results, right? They're part of the past.
It was my understanding that there would be no math.
You would think that. A lot of people at the casino might want to not be Chevy and might want to bone up on their math a little bit. But that's okay. To me, jumping in the shoe is a courtesy thing. And, because you don't want to upset other players at the table. The fact he didn't was a courtesy thing. But if he'd asked me, I would have said, yeah, come on in. It doesn't matter, because it's not going to affect the probability of what I get the rest of the way. So as I continue to win, because now I really hit a little bit of a hot streak, right in front of me, I wanted to be like, I'm in the frickin' room with you. The guy looks at the dealer and he goes, what's he doing over there? Well, he should be pressing that bet. And the dealer's like, he's been hot. He could be up a lot. And he's like, I don't know what he's doing over there. And I got so aggravated. I looked at my chip stack, which, by the way, at this point I'd bought in at 100 for the table. At this point, I was over 200, which means I had gotten back the $100 I had lost on the 3-card prime table. I had my 100 I started with on this table, and I actually had enough to cover the fee the casino charges you when you use their ATM machine. So at this point, I was pretty much break even, slightly up, and I had put aside a tip for the dealer. So I voiced out aloud, you know what? I'm not pressing because I was already down, and it doesn't work when you press. That's not a viable strategy. I said, and you know what? I looked down at my chip stack. I said, at this point, I made back what I wanted to. Color me up. And so I left. So again, a gambling misconception about playing any game. And this can be, you've played craps before, right?
Sure have.
You've played blackjack before. Do you know the concept behind the whole pressing up your bet?
No.
The theory behind pressing your bet is that the table is hot. And if you're hot and you're winning hands and the shoe is hot, then, if you're betting 10, you've won a couple hands, you got to get 20 out there. You got to get 30 out there. You need to go ahead and make money doing that. What's wrong with that theory? Other than the fact it doesn't work if you understand basic math, which you think you would if you were playing at a casino, right? When you're dealing out of any blackjack shoe, let's say you have 8 decks in a shoe, right? How many aces are going to be in those 8 decks? 32, right?
32. That's correct.
There's a certain number of face cards. There's a certain number of 2s and 3s. So aces, you have 4 out of every 52 cards is an ace, correct?
That is correct.
So what's the math on that? What's 4 out of 52 going to give you for your math at that point? As far as the percentage goes, what's the chance of an ace coming out?
It was my understanding that there would be no math.
There would be. You don't have that automatically in your head?
It's about 7.5%.
You're exactly right. It's slightly under 8%. It's 7 and change. It's going to be an ace. So here's my question. When you throw a card out of the shoe, technically, any card that's not an ace changes that percentage. How much does one card change out of that? Or 2 cards? Or 6 cards? Or 8 cards? Out of an 8-deck shoe that's going to have 416 cards in it. How much is that changing the percentages?
Minuscule amount.
Exactly. You've heard the adage, and again, this is the math teaser for anyone listening to this podcast. If you flip a coin in the air 49 times in a row, it lands up heads. What's the odds it's going to land up heads on that 50th toss?
50-50.
Exactly. That's basic math. And anyone who knows and understands probabilities understands that. Now, there is a way to press your bet or to change your bet, and that's if you're doing something that's called advantage play, if you're actually counting cards, which again, anyone who doesn't know what counting cards is, it's not what you saw in The Hangover or Rain Man. You're not literally counting every card out of the deck.
Gambling? Who said anything about gambling? It's not gambling when you know you're going to win. Counting cards is a foolproof system.
It's also illegal.
It's not illegal. It's frowned upon, like masturbating on an airplane.
You're assigning positive and negative values to cards. And if the deck is rich, what's left in high cards, face cards, it's advantageous to the player for a number of reasons. The dealer makes more hands when there are more low cards in there and makes it harder for you to get good hands. So if the deck of what's left is rich in lower cards, then that's not advantageous to you. Those are opportunities where you can alter the size of your bet if you're counting, which I wasn't doing because I'm there to relax and not to try to make $1 million and retire off of it. Because guess who doesn't do that at casinos? Anybody, right? Not even Better X that we were talking about on our last podcast when he was betting sports gambling. That's even a little different. But I'm literally being mocked at the table by a dealer who you think would know that pressing doesn't work. Because what happens prior doesn't really matter. There is no such thing as streaks. There's something that would be more like the term you would probably use as a chop. Think of it as you win a hand, you lose a hand. You win a couple, you lose one. Then you win one, then you lose a couple. Does that sound like how when you usually play, how that works?
Yep.
How often do you win like 5 or 6 hands in a row?
Not very often.
Yeah, because you know why? The odds are very, very long. And I forgot where I saw exactly what the odds were, but it's extremely unlikely that you're going to win 5 or 6 hands in a row. So if you're basically doing something like increasing your bet every time you win, you could go through a stretch where you win 5 hands, you lose 5 hands, but because of the way the sequence worked and you were upping your bet after you'd win a hand, you'd actually be down after losing those 10 hands. In fact, the only reason I ended up was because, like I said, I won a decent number of hands, but not enough to where pressing would have made really any significant difference. I was flabbergasted that I was literally being trash talked at the freaking table by a player who wasn't yet in the game when I had the big chip. Have you ever done that? Have you ever been at a table where somebody with no money is sitting there telling you how to play? Or someone who's getting their ass kicked is telling you how to play? And you're like, and dude, who's got the chips in front of them? Who's winning over here? So I looked and I said, you know what I'm doing? I'm doing what most people, I actually said this. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do what most people don't do when they're actually up on their session. I'm going to cash out and leave. So I colored up. The cashier's cage was maybe a couple 100 feet over to the side. Because again, it's not a huge casino. So I was leaving. The guy bought into the table. I went, got in line, took me a minute, got my cash, got my money back. And I'm like, okay, I'm up a little bit on the trip. To get back to my room, I had to go back past this table. Guess who wasn't at the table anymore, Steven? Mr. Presser had already been broken out. So, I doubt he's out there listening to this podcast. But if he is, somehow, by some chance miracle, by some fortune of good luck on my part, I can only tell him and say, you know what? One of us left with money. The other one left with probably a dumb look on his face. And guess who it wasn't? It wasn't this guy. So that was a little aggravating just because, again, trash talking me at the table for not playing correctly when he doesn't understand and someone may listen to this and say, oh, you absolutely have to press to make your money. That's not how it works. That's not how math works.
Let me give you the math, by the way. Let's just say we're flipping a coin, okay? 50-50. Now, like you said, if you have 50 or 49 flips in a row that it's all tails, the likelihood that it's tails on the next flip is still 50-50, right?
That is correct.
Any one flip, it's a 50-50. You just mentioned what's the likelihood of winning 5 hands in a row, right? So what is the likelihood of winning 5 flips in a row? It's 3%. 3%.
Yeah.
That's the probability.
Yeah.
6 in a row would be 1.5%.
It's not as easy as you would think it would be.
The math proves that there is no such thing as a hot streak. It is completely random. You have no idea when it's going to come, when it's going to go. I mean, it happens. Sometimes you will win 6 or 7 hands in a row. Completely random. You could just as easily lose 6 or 7 in a row. And like you said, if you're pressing, guess what happens when you're pressing? You're losing your money at a much faster rate.
I've seen players use another type of theory. There's actually a specific name for this betting strategy, but they do the same thing where it's like, if I lose the hand, I double my bet on the next one because I'm due. I'm going to win a hand eventually, right? I can't lose doing that. Guess what happens to those players? They end up losing. You know why? Because usually what happens is the table minimum or the table maximum on any particular game will cap you off at some point. It's a lot easier for the house to win 3 or 4 hands in a row. Would you agree? Because why? The odds are in their favor, right?
Right, because it's not a 50-50 proposition. It's not like a coin flip. In blackjack, what is it? Probably 45-55?
If you're playing optimal book strategy, there's a certain advantage the house has, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's not a great one. But I will tell you, just reading here really quickly from a well-respected gambling website with odds on it, they were talking about how often could a player expect to win 4 hands in a row. So this is without a push anywhere, without a tie. The probability of a blackjack player winning 4 hands in a row on a table where the dealer's standing on a soft 17, and unless you're on a high limit table, most casinos, the dealers hit soft 17, which is in the casino's favor. The probability of 4 wins in a row is literally, like you said, it's like the coin flip odds to some extent. It's a little under 5%. So you know what? That just doesn't happen. And if you're chasing that, if you're chasing losses and you're chasing bad numbers, then you're making a mistake. That's how you end up losing money. But then again, I ended up not losing. That's really the gambling thing, is you need to know when to walk away, right? When you're up and you've made what you think you need to, you can't sit there and say, well, I can make more. or I'm going to, the table's hot. I need to really push this, because that's how you end up with nothing, like Mr. Smartass at the end of the table. So the fact he was gone, I can't even tell you probably the smug smile I had on my face when I walked past the table, and I made eye contact with the dealer and kind of looked at her like, where's the presser? Oh, you cleaned him out already. I wonder if he pressed. I guess it didn't matter, right? In the end, it didn't really matter. So, but that's not the only stupidity I saw, because the other stupidity, that's just the gambling stupidity. That's just math. I'm going to do some other numbers, because to get to Mississippi, I drove, because it's short. It's not a big trip. And I'm sure you're going to bring this up. I don't like to fly anyway. I have an irrational fear of flying, which I know you'll rub in at some point here. It is irrational. And I know, as someone who knows numbers, it's either hypocritical or ironic that I'm afraid to death to get on a plane, knowing what the numbers are. But I drove to Mississippi. I have reasons for being scarred. I have reasons for being petrified, personal reasons to get on an airplane that don't necessarily connect with other people. And I understand that. And I'm at peace with that. I'm okay. I'm okay with being labeled any number of things for not getting on a plane. But I probably should have, because as I was driving to Mississippi, the weather down here, we've gone from hot to cold to hot to cold. So we had fog. You've driven in fog before. What should you not be doing in fog? How about driving 90 miles an hour in the fog, swerving in and out of traffic, cutting in front of you, literally like 5 inches in front of someone's car, tailgating? And want to take a wild guess who had to deal with that on his trip to Mississippi? What the is wrong with people? Who does this? Who gets in? How much does an automobile weigh? It's a couple tons, right? Who gets in a couple ton piece of machinery and puts their life and everybody else's life at stake? But you, anyone listening to this would agree, they're terrible drivers. How many times have you heard the phrase, in my state, we have the worst drivers, right? No, you know what? Everyone's right when they say that, because every person in this country, not everybody, but the huge majority of people on the road do not know how to operate a motor vehicle. I'm absolutely convinced of that at this point. You live down here. You remember what it was like down here. Were the drivers terrible?
They're worse here.
Are you sure?
Positive. Way worse.
You know what? I'm just going to say they're terrible everywhere. Like I said, I'm barely can see in front of me. And I saw multiple times cars going by me that had to have been doing. Now, the speed limit on this section of interstate was 70. Okay. These cars had to have been doing 90, because they went by me like the car I was in reverse. And I'm like, wow, you can't even see 2 feet in front of your car. How are you going to stop? How are you going to bring that thing to a halt if somebody has braked in front of you? I guess everybody got, and going back to the lucky thing, I guess everybody got lucky, because they were certainly doing the wrong thing behind the wheel of their car. And yet somehow or another managed to not kill anybody. But then again, the fog was so thick, if they had, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have seen the carnage unless it was right in front of me. How do we get to this point? What does it take to get a driver's license anymore? How long ago did you take your initial driver's test? It's been a number of years. We're both up there enough in age. It's been a long time since we had to take a driver's test, right? What are they doing these days? Do they give you a license literally if you have like a name and a face to put on the photo ID? Is that all you need to get a license anymore? Do I sound a little upset? I saw my life pass in front of me. And to be honest with you, it had some highlights. It had some lowlights. Some of our picks over the last few weeks were probably some of those lowlights. There were some interesting moments. I don't really like seeing my life pass in front of me while I'm in my car trying to get to a place I want to relax, because people can't operate their motor vehicle. It's so easy to get a driver's license. Here's your statistics in the U.S., and I'm pulling this from a website. It's the Association for Safe International Road Travel. And again, I don't know how major of an organization this is. It looks like it's been updated recently, so I'm going to guess that these stats are somewhat accurate, but I'm going to quote them. They quote that you have over 37,000 people will die in a road crash each year. 2.35 million injured or disabled in road accidents. 1,600 children that are under 15 years of age die every year. 8,000 people killed in crashes that involve drivers ages 16 to 20. I think I got my license when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me get it until I was 17. And I think that, I'm not sure if that was the law in Louisiana at the time or not, but that's some of your, I guess, your most reckless drivers or your youngest ones. $230 billion a year are what road crashes cost the United States. And it's the single greatest annual cause of death of healthy U.S. citizens traveling abroad. So in other words, if you're going to die, you're most likely, and barring getting ill, getting a sickness or something, if you die, especially at a younger age, you're probably dying in an auto wreck. It's because these people don't know how to drive. Oh my God. I see it every day. I drive into work. I have to drive downtown into the city of New Orleans. And it's literally like, you've seen the movie Death Race, right? It's like a version of Death Race, but just without the weapons. Well, then again, we are in New Orleans. Probably half the people driving may be packing weapons. I don't know. They're not pulling them out yet in their cars, but they have a weapon. The big automobile's the weapon, right? I pulled up a flight school. Not sure where this flight school is located, but I just pulled up a random flight school to find out exactly if I wanted to get a pilot's license, just to fly like a little tiny private plane. It would just be me and somebody else that, honestly, if I crashed it, unless I had really bad luck in where I was at, if I was like over the wilderness or the countryside somewheres, who am I probably killing in that? Me and whoever else was dumb enough to get in the plane with me, right? It takes at least 3 months to get your license to be a private pilot. It takes a while. You need 40 hours of certified flight time with a flight instructor to even get your certificate to be able to fly a plane. So you've got to have somebody in there. And that's not even talking about all the time it takes to take tests and to go through with instructors and all these things you have to do to fly a plane. And I know you would say, well, flying a plane is a lot more complicated than driving a car. It is, except look at the numbers I just rattled off. You would think that they would have a little bit more scrutiny when it comes to actually giving people driver's licenses. You would think that would be a big thing, but obviously it doesn't matter. They'll give a license to anybody. Am I off base here? You drive to work, right? You have a pretty lengthy drive. How many idiots do you see on a regular basis?
I have a half-hour drive
a day
each way. I probably see hundreds of bad drivers. Most of the people I'm passing are bad drivers.
And I'm not talking bad. Dangerous. Dangerous to you, to themselves.
I have a couple of theories on this. You bring up a good point. One of the things I remember when I used to live down in New Orleans, one of the things I did was I built simulators for crane operators. Training to be a crane operator, it literally took like a year. You had to go through a year apprenticeship before you got a license to be a crane operator. Minimum of a year. Sometimes it took longer. When you're driving, everyone just assumes, oh, I'm just going to get in the car and drive. No one pays attention. Everyone's tweeting, texting. I have a theory about that. And it kind of relates to sports. There was a time in hockey, for example, that players didn't wear helmets and goalies didn't even wear masks. And what happened was players, because they knew the goalies weren't wearing a mask, wouldn't shoot high. They would only shoot low. The minute they put a mask on the players, which really wasn't that protective, it was made out of leather initially, they started shooting high, and there was many more head and facial injuries amongst goaltenders. Same thing with football helmets. When they used to have the old leather helmets, people didn't hit as hard. They tackled. It wasn't hitting, it was tackling. The safer they make the equipment, the more people think they can't get hurt. They feel invincible. And that's what's happened with cars. Think about when we were growing up, right? Seatbelts were kind of an afterthought. There was no such thing as an airbag. There were no such things as crumple zones on a car. Gosh, I mean, it wasn't until the 60s or 70s that they had safety glass. They keep making the cars safer and safer, accident avoidance, the cars that automatically stop for you, the ones that warn you when you're going out of your lane. And all that does is it creates a scenario where people think they have to pay less and less attention. Plus, let's be honest, if there's one thing we can say about the trends in this country is everybody is so self-centered. There seems to be very little care about those around you. Everyone is always like self-absorbed and in their own little world.
My road, my highway, right? That's the mentality then.
Correct.
That's what you're talking
Correct.
about. I have a solution, and it would be a controversial solution, but a solution nonetheless. I'd mentioned it to you before. It's brilliant in its own idiocy. Okay. So my solution was to go ahead and just spend the money to hire more traffic officers. Okay. Now, according to ZipRecruiter, a traffic officer's annual salary as of January of 2019 is $35,000 and change. I'm sure that varies greatly. Oh, there's another one here that says it's $59,000. So
yeah, it's high. It's higher than that.
Okay, let's say it's $59,000. Let's say it's $60,000 a year, right? Any community, you could hire just a handful of those guys. And just where I live, there's an intersection, and you know the main one I'm talking about, right? Literally off the road I live on and the main U.S. highway that's right down the street, right? That's just one main intersection. You could post just a cop on a bike and just say, all I want you to do is to pull over the people who run the red light and recklessly endanger somebody. And I'm not talking about the light's yellow. It's kind of, you're in that gray area. If I brake, I may not be able to brake in time. So let me accelerate through it. It turned red as I'm going through. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people who the light goes red and you can literally count 1, 2, and there he goes. Just a park on a bike. It's a lot easier to see the police when they're parked there in their cars, right? It's a lot harder to see them when they're on a bike off on the side of the road. And just get them to pull these people over and to ticket them. And my idea would be, you know what? When you're ticketed for reckless driving, and that's exactly what that is. And that idiot that was driving in the fog, that almost tailgated me, almost hit me from behind in Mississippi, almost cut me off and almost ran me off the road that way. People like that, people that are reckless, people that don't care about their own safety, obviously, and certainly don't care about yours or mine when we're on the road. That's reckless driving. You get ticketed for that. You get hit with a nice solid, maybe a $500 fine. I'm not sure what the ticket is in Louisiana for reckless driving, but let's just say it was $500. That would be a nice disincentive right off the bat. And my guess is, just judging on one time where I was sitting outside a building in view of one of these intersections where I live, just the number of cars I saw that blatantly ran the light over the period of like 20 minutes, I'm pretty sure that officer might be able to make his salary back and then some, maybe within a week or two, if he just sat out there and just did that for 8 hours. And if you had a couple of them doing that on their shift, that would be your first offense. Your second offense, 6 months suspended license, maybe like a $1,500 fine. After that, permanent suspension of your license, impound your automobile and sell that sucker in a public auction. And I remember saying this, and I'm like, look at all the benefits. Gets the bad drivers off the road. You get fewer people on the highway, means less traffic, less carbon emissions, better for the environment, less fuel burned, less time spent in traffic jams. And there was a stat I saw one time that showed how long people waste just sitting around in traffic, right? Fewer people means you're not taking so long to get to work. Your commute, my commute is less. It's good all around. I remember your comment was, yeah, but that would never pass. No one would ever agree to that, right? That's what you said, right?
That is.
And my argument was they absolutely would, because if you ask anybody, are you a good driver? What's their answer going to be?
Yeah, my dad lets me drive slow on the driveway. I'm an excellent driver.
It's the Rain Man quote. I'm an excellent driver. That's what they're going to tell you. So, of course, they'll vote for it. They would be in favor of it because they'd be looking at it saying, you know what? It's not going to affect me. It's going to get all the rest of these idiots out of my way. That's my solution. I don't think anyone will push it. If I was dictator in charge, that would be one of the things I'd do. And we'd have a lot safer roads as a result of it, I would guess.
Here's the problem. So everyone would agree to it. And then as more and more people got hit with fines, there would be such an uproar that the politicians and the people in these towns, etc., would just be like, nope, not gonna die on that hill. And the reason I say that is because that's exactly what happened in the state of New Jersey. So state of New Jersey piloted a red camera ticketing system. Okay. So they have cameras on all the red lights. When somebody goes through a red light, takes a picture, sends you a ticket, right? I didn't hear of any issues of people getting a ticket claiming that they weren't going through a red light. They just complained that they got a ticket. And enough people complained that the state of New Jersey said, you know what? We're going to bag this. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money, right? You send a ticket, it takes a picture. It automatically reads the license plate number, matches it up with a person and an address, sends a ticket. You have the ticket within 2 or 3 days after going through the red light. Should promote safe driving. If people know that there are cameras, isn't that a deterrent, you would think, right?
You'd think.
But what happened is enough people got caught and people were saying this is bull, but enough people complained that the towns and the state just said, no, we're not going to do this because we're going to spend all of our time in court fighting these tickets. Because that's what happens. So somebody gets a ticket, then they go to court, and now you need people working in the courts. You have to have court dates. You have to pay judges. You have to do all this stuff. The problem that this country has with cars is like no other country in the world. Most other countries really rely on public transportation. Having a car is very much a luxury. In this country, having a car is a right.
I will say this. Everyone has the right to own a car. Not everyone has a right to a license to drive it, though. That may be the difference, or, if that's nitpicking. If you want to buy an automobile, if you're 10 and you're Richie Rich from the comic books and cartoons, right? If you're Richie Rich and you want to buy a car because you're the richest kid in the world at 10 years old, then you can't be stopped from doing that, because I guess you have a right to do that. But do you have the right to drive it? No. If you can't pass a test, if you can't operate it safely, you don't have a right to a license to drive a car. And that would be a very unpopular opinion. But again, find me anywhere in the Constitution where it says the right to drive an automobile, or even the right to drive a horse, back when it was just horses and you didn't have automobiles when the Constitution was written. You had horses. There's not even a right to drive a horse in there, is there? Did I miss that amendment? Right to ride a burro? How about a jackass? Because that would fit a lot of the people that, like I said, that I see on the road on a regular basis. But, these are the things that are never going to change, because that's the society we are. It's a society, as you said, of people driving cars. Sadly enough, a lot of them not driving them responsibly. But
USA, USA, USA. It's our right as Americans to be assholes.
I won't argue with that. And that seems to be a good place for us to call this episode, because I'm sure there's somebody listening right now that's like, wow, those two guys are assholes for telling me I can't drive my car. So on that note, I think we should wrap it up.
My name is Steven, and I am an asshole.
There you go. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Excruciating Minutiae Podcast. Check us out at excruciatingpodcast.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on any of your favorite podcast platforms and follow us on Twitter at excruciatingpod. See you at the next episode.